Hi folks, how you doing? Just a new book. Well, it's new for me. Down and Out in Paris and London is written by George Orwell. It's his adventures living as someone who was on or below the poverty line, most cases below, and just showing us what life was like for him in that time. So I think it was written late 1920s, so almost 100 years ago. And I don't know how much has actually changed. So the first part, he's in Paris and he's got no money. He's got enough to pay his rent for a month. So it gives him a month to try and find some work. And to try and pawn some of his clothes. He doesn't seem to have an awful lot of possessions at all, which I find very interesting. Me with so much, and to have nothing to even pawn. Yeah, interesting. So he went to a friend who was also having financial difficulties, and said, "Oh, but I'm a waiter. I can get a job at," and that names this restaurant somewhere, and they walk to the restaurant and they discover it's not even open yet, and it won't be open for a couple of weeks. But they both end up with a job somewhere else. Now, George Orwell is at that point, he gets a job as something called a plongeur, which I think is a dishwasher. Excuse my voice. So I think it's a dishwasher, but he does a lot more than washing dishes. And what he does is also support all the staff with all their food needs. Doesn't actually make anything, as far as I understand, but he does a lot of other stuff like tidying and cleaning and taking the food from the kitchen in point A to point B where the staff eat. And he's sworn at a lot. At one time he counts a particular word that they used, and one day they used it 39 times. Apparently they enjoy swearing at English people. So that's why he got the job, and that's how come he kept the job. But at least with that job he got some money. Not an awful lot, but some. And he also got fed while he was there, so that's good. Because before then, in looking for work, he'd walked. He'd walked, I think, 12 or 13 kilometres, and he hadn't even eaten for 60 hours. And I just can't understand how hard that must have been for him. And there are many homeless people around the world, or even some people who have a home, who are the same. They have no money for food. You prioritise the rent, or the mortgage, or the food, or the electricity bill, or the gas bill, or the water bill, or the rates. It's like, what do you pay first? And he didn't have any sorts of bills like that. He just had the board, not even the board, just the lodging. So just a room probably smaller than the one I'm in, but I'm guessing there. I have been to hotels in Paris and they were rather small, but I think they were bigger than some of the ones in London. So that was interesting. But we're talking 100 years ago. So I don't know what things were like 100 years ago, but reading this, I got some understanding of what it must have been like to have gone through those times. And then he just decides he's had enough of Paris, and he sends a message, probably a letter, to a friend in England, in London who says, yes, of course, I've got this job for you. You start now. So he gets some money from his friend in London because doesn't have enough money to get over there. He takes the cheapest fare possible to get over from Paris to London, gets to his friend's office and discovers the job has been put off for a month because the client has gone away for a month. So all of a sudden he's abandoned in London with no food, virtually no money, no job. And then so the rest of the book details how he lived in London, how he managed to get through from day after day after day for a whole month with virtually no money. There were places for homeless people because, of course, you can't live on the streets, you can't sleep on the streets, you can't sleep in the parks. That was illegal, so he was moved on every time he tried to sit down and look like he was asleep. So that was a challenge, and he found these places, and I've just had a blank on the word that they were called. But he ended up tramping the streets and going from lodging to lodging because you could only stay one night in each of these lodgings, and you were given, I think, tea and maybe one minimal meal. Spike. That's the word for these places. I have no idea if that's the real word or if that's just the word the tramps made up. And some of them were better than others. Some of them, there were no beds, so you slept on the floor. And of course you had no blankets. All you had was whatever you could carry in your pockets. That might have been a batch of tobacco, or of course that was if you had the money. If you didn't, you picked up cigarette ends from the street. And this is before cigarettes had filters. So you would end up with this tiny little bit of an end of a cigarette, which you could then pull apart and make into a bigger one if you happen to have some papers from a cigarette packet. This is just mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, we must be better now, although when I say must, it's more a wishful thinking because I don't think we're any better. I think I've seen homeless in America, in England, in Australia. I probably saw homeless in parts of Europe. I just don't have any memory of it at the time. And I recently read a book, which I didn't bring over to me, and I will not reach over. Actually, no, I can reach over because I've got it on the top. I recently read a book, Down to the Bone, by Clemence Orwell, where she details some women she has met and spent some time with, who, again, they have so little, and yet they were so happy to share with her. But in this book, he has even less than those women. And it was mind-blowing. And the writing was so clear and concise. And having read both 1984 and Animal Farm, in fact, Animal Farm I studied at school, but I don't remember a thing of what we talked about. But having read them, I now, and read this next, I now totally understand, well, no, not totally understand, I have some more understanding of how he came to write 1984 and came to write Animal Farm. It's a lot more clear. Some of the ideas are in this, so reading this, you can get some idea. And reading the back of it, it says, there's a little snippet from a review written with so much simple force. The result is curiously beautiful, by Compton Mackenzie. Now, Compton Mackenzie is a fantastic author in his own right, and he wrote something called Whiskey Galore, which has been made into a movie, and then the movie was remade recently. So I think they made the movie in 40s or 50s. Maybe it might have been 60s. It wouldn't be 40s because it was set in the 40s. It was set in the war, in World War II. So it wouldn't have been there. It was probably made in the 60s. It was brilliant. And then the remake was brilliant as well. It had, if I can get the name right, Eddie Susie Izzard, or Susie Eddie Izzard. One of those is correct. And so that was nice. It was a lovely book, lovely movie, lovely book. And so it's really nice to see Compton Mackenzie with a little snippet from a review in this book. It's so the cover, which I've been brandishing a lot, is a photo. I don't know when it was taken, but it says "Behind the Restaurant" by Bill Brand, with copyright of Neuer Brand. Bill Brand, it's got a DT. And it's courtesy of the Edwin Hook Gallery, Chicago. So that's just a tramp, someone with no money, going through the rubbish bins looking for food, which sounds wrong, but until you have no money to buy food, you don't know what you'll do. Hang on. I need to fill that up. Tastes a bit of tea. I'm sure there's only water in there. I love this book. Well, I hated the ideas behind it. I hated the fact that people do not have food. That just is so wrong to me. But I loved the writing. I loved the way he puts words together, the way he showed us what life was for him in Paris and London in the late 1920s. So almost 100 years ago. I read somewhere something from the last day or two that it was written in 1929, but I'm not sure. So, anyway, fascinating reading. That would be a really good historical reading for you. I only made one note here, page 1970, page 178. I should do my videos earlier in the day. 178. Okay, so the reason I've written this down is because there's a whole 3 pages all about swearing and how the swear words change as subject to fashion. So it used to be that 20 years ago, so that's about 1900, the London working classes habitually used the word bloody. Now they have abandoned it utterly. Those novelists still represent them as using it. So the swear words, I won't read out the other swear words because I don't use those words. But the words change, and that's what he's saying on pages 178 to 180, that words change. And it's not just swear words, but it's other words as well. It's insults, it's adjectives, it's the way we use words. And you've probably noticed over the past 10 years how words have changed. Sometimes it's we've shortened words, like probably. People will now say probably. Well, not me, but I'm pedantic. They will write probably, and it drives me to distraction. Because I like English to be as it was when I was young, which it never will be. But it would be nice if that happened. Anyway, here you go. A little something I've recently read, and now I can put it on my shelf because I do not want to lose this book. I want to keep it for at least a while longer. One day I will throw out some books. But that day is not today. And I cannot remember what I'm quoting there, misquoting. Anyway, good book. Lots of reprints out there. I'll see you on the flip side. Subscribe down below or not, as you choose. And I'll catch you next time. Bye.